Let's talk a little bit about the basics of mental illness. So, basic signs and symptoms of mental illness: social withdrawal. So, suddenly not wanting to go to social functions, not wanting to hang out with friends, mood disturbance, large changes in mood over a period of time. It's okay to have ups and downs. We all have our ups and down days, but this would be over a large period of time, noticeable changes in mood. Thought disturbances, things like paranoia, delusions, things that are maybe out of the norm for this individual. Changes in behavior, and then irregular expressions of feeling. So things that, again, just don't seem quite normal for that individual are ways or indicators that mental illness might be looming. Trauma. We cannot talk about mental illness without talking about trauma, because trauma and mental illness are so tied. And most individuals, we have such high rates of trauma in the US, most individuals have some experience of trauma. So 30% of individuals receiving healthcare services have experienced adverse childhood events, meaning any exposure to severe physical, sexual abuse, neglect, domestic violence in childhood that leads to trauma. So that's 1/3 of the clients that you will see have experienced trauma. Trauma can occur at any stage of life, resulting in the experience of violence, abuse, loss, disaster, and other emotionally impactful experiences. Trauma impacts the way that individuals process emotions. It's called emotional dysregulation, and it can result in feeling too much or too little. So, individuals who have trauma may change the way that they feel. And we also know that there's noticeable changes in the brain after trauma. And so the way trauma can have lasting long-term effects on someone's mental health and make them much more susceptible to mental illness in the future. Trauma can result in lack of control over one's life. An individual who's experienced multiple episodes of trauma will feel hopeless. They will feel like they do not have the ability to control their own life. Thus, you will often see these individuals self-medicate as a way to gain control. So this may look like misuse of prescription drugs. It may look like street drugs. It may look like alcohol. And substance use leads to psychological distress. So when we are overusing substances, we are putting stress on our mental health and our physical bodies. And higher substance use leads to higher psychological distress. So the more substance we use, the more psychological distress we will see. It also impairs our emotional regulation. So an individual who's under the influence of substances has a harder time regulating their emotions. And even when they're coming down from substances, so when they're not actively under the influence, they're going to struggle to regulate their emotions because their brain is working so hard to think about that next fix and to work on getting that next fix. But emotional regulation is an essential component of wellness. So we're sort of getting this perfect storm for these increased rates of mental illness, these increased rates of trauma, right? And then we're bringing in substance use, and now we have this perfect storm that's leading us to psychological distress.